And I don't even know how many women actually know what alignment feels like. I think a lot of people, women in particular, are scared to say what's true for them, because when you come into that awareness, you can either get really angry and frustrated that somebody isn't doing what you want them to do, or that you've allowed yourself to do something that you no longer want to do. Right? By having that awareness, I can go, oh my God, that's not actually me saying that, that's somebody else saying that. And therefore that can be enough of a shift, and then we'll move on. We'll go, okay, when was the next time you heard that you had to be skinny to be included and accepted and validated? That social proofing actually keeps us stuck because it doesn't actually allow our true creativity to come through, and it's still a form of external validation. I'm hearing more and more people, including myself, saying I think I should be further along than where I am because of that external story getting shown to me. Again, tuning yourself out to make $1. And I'm not willing to do that. Like, I'm literally not willing to do that.
Hi, friends, and welcome to Soul Support, a podcast for spiritual business owners and holistic practitioners to discuss the unique landscape of our professional lives. In this container, we have meaningful conversations about all of the aspects of spiritual business ownership, from marketing and advertising to supporting our clients as multidimensional beings, our own spiritual journeys, and so much more. Each episode is truly unique because we are speaking to all different types of providers like Reiki healers, tarot readers, mediums, channelers, hypnotherapists, and everything in between. My name is Leslie. I'm a mom, a farmer, a quantum journeys hypnotherapist, and an intuitive graphic designer, and I'm so excited to be having this conversation. Soul Support has been a passion project of mine for a long time, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you're here right now. Today's conversation is truly beautiful and unique, and I look forward to going deep with you. Thanks for being here.
Sarah, I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about what you do, the types of services you offer, and the type of people that you help.
Oh, there's a lot in there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's a good thing. Tell me all the things.
Particularly when I've been in a trade for 23 years. I've been a massage therapist / myotherapist for 23 years. So the type of people we work with, typically a myotherapist is more holistic than a remedial massage therapist, in that we view you as a whole person. So we look beyond the soft tissue and all of that kind of stuff. So I might talk to you about your stress. I might talk to you about the food you eat. I might talk to you about your sleep patterns. I might talk to you about all of those things, because they can actually inform how your pain is expressed. So some people can be quite surprised at how influential food is in their pain story. And the saying that sleep, lack of sleep or poor sleep and all of that kind of stuff can compound how you feel the next day. So all of those kind of things. And so I actually work with people from a broad spectrum, anything from, the hobby athlete to the desk worker to the tradie so I'm not limited in scope that way. So common ailments that tend to show up are lower back pain and neck pain. They're probably the two most common issues that show up. And I've worked in a variety of industries, from the day spa industry to clinical. I've worked in gyms, all sorts of things. I have a exercise health background as well, and a nutrition background. So I like to bring all of that into my massage work and stuff like that. And then recently introduced Holistic Counselling. So that's the online component that I offer, obviously, anywhere and everywhere. Obviously, massage has to be good old Melbourne-based, Australian Melbourne-based, from that scenario. So the holistic counselling came in through, most of you probably know, Melbourne didn't have a great COVID experience. And so I wasn't allowed to work during that phase. So I was shut down completely. I couldn't go to work, clearly because most of my work's online, face-to-face, hands-on. I didn't actually see clients during all of those shutdown phases. So during that period, holistic counselling entered the realm. Good old Facebook feed throwing it at me as an alternative therapy that intrigued me enough to study it, and it was a self-study process, and obviously I had a lot of time on my hands, so I could smash that one out. And as I said, I've got quite an extensive study background, so it wasn't that hard for me to dedicate time to it and all of that. As I said, when you're stuck in your home for 22 hours a day, pretty easy to do. And that just added another layer to the work I do. It gave me that probably more mental scope as opposed to the physical scope. So I now feel like I'm completely holistic when I take in mind, body, spirit, and soul, and all of those kind of conversations into my work, and having a better conduit to express that with my clients from that standpoint. And as I said, there is an online entity to that, which is just the holistic counselling. And I probably don't run it like a standard holistic counselling because of all the background that I have. And the main reason I went with holistic counselling and not more traditional forms is the spiritual side of it. So the capacity to be able to use tarot and oracle cards and talk about crystals and color therapy and, all of those, and meditation and visualizations, and bring all of that in with the talk therapy as well. So it's, again, a layered approach from that side of things. So clearly people who are looking for that more traditional side of things aren't necessarily going to be drawn to someone who they might consider a bit on the woo side. But that's my reality. And as in an effort to be authentic from that side of things, there is that woo element to me, that mind-body connection that we can't disengage from, because even science is now proving that connection is getting stronger and stronger with all the axes and all of that kind of stuff, like gut brain axes and how that affects your mental health and all of those kind of things. And then taking that a step out, as I said, bringing in that spiritual side that I think most of us like to believe, that we are connected to a higher source, that there is something else that is in playing a role, maybe not the whole role, but playing a role in how we show up in the world. Hence, that's the reason that I went down that holistic path as opposed to a more traditional just talk therapy side of things and only focusing on the mind and not much else really. And again, broad scope with that, but typically women more so in that side of things. And I think this is an interesting thing just dropping in now. I think the main reason that women are my focus is we're getting bombarded with how we should show up, right? Like we're getting hit left, right, and center with, the terminology bro marketing. Not that I'm particularly a fan of that, but there is this element that, there's a level of push that we've got to show up, not only in our families, but in our businesses and all of this kind of stuff in a certain way. Like if we're too emotional, then we're too hard to handle. And if we're too bossy, then we're too hard to handle. And if we're too soft, then we're not working hard enough. And, there's a collective messaging basically all around that saying that we're not enough. And it's one term that I hate, because in truth, you will never meet that enoughness, because who determines enough, right? Who determines enough? And most likely it's not actually you, it's a societal expectation telling you how many hours you're meant to work and when you're meant to show up and how you're meant to show up and what you're meant to look like and what you're meant to say and, all of those kind of things. So my holistic counselling work is getting you back in touch with you and how you want to show up in your families, how you want to show up at work, tuning back into self, because we've been taught to tune ourselves out. We've been taught to disengage from self. We've been taught to, as I said, manipulate ourselves to make an end goal occur, as opposed to flowing, which is our feminine essence, receiving, which is also our feminine essence, underpinned by a level of action that feels aligned, right? And I don't even know how many women actually know what alignment feels like. I think a lot of people, women in particular, are scared to say what's true for them. And that can be anything from how they've perceived motherhood, what they expected out of motherhood, the reality of motherhood. I'm not a mother myself, and there's choices made there. But I also have stories from that kind of thing, because I get told I'm selfish. I get told you know, who's going to look after you when you're old? All of those kind of stories. That can run into decision making unless we actually step back and go, what's right for me? Like literally what's right for me. And that's not a one and done conversation. That is clearly not a one and done conversation. Because again, I believe that we evolve, whether that's consciously or unconsciously. There's changes going on underneath us, whether we like it. On some level, shifts and changes occur depending on what shows up in our life and all of those kind of things. That can be a death, it can be a job change, it can be a relationship breakdown, it can be children with medical diagnoses, any of those kind of things that can spin us on our, axes and go, okay, what's next and what shows up next on all of those kind of things is, as I said, teaching women to tune back into self. It's, where are you now? What's blocking you from getting where you want to go, and how can we get you there is basically the crux of the work that I do. So yeah, long answer, sorry.
That's beautiful. And you touched on so many different important elements of having a spiritual business. There's not a one size fits all approach. We are mind, body, and spirit. We are multidimensional beings existing at many different planes of existence. And we are also existing within this very restrictive world where we have been taught that we have to show up attractive, easy to work with. We can't talk about our problems because then we're putting too much focus on ourselves. All of these different layers that must be peeled back from so many different perspectives. And so that's what I love about what you do, is it really is incredibly comprehensive. It's this return to authenticity, whatever that may be for that particular individual.
And I think that's the important point, that we need to remember that authenticity is individual. Like it's a crux term, but in essence, it is actually individual for each person. Like if we try and put an authenticity label on, a broader spectrum of what that actually looks like, as we said, your definition of authenticity and how you want to show up in all likelihood will be different to how I want to show up. And I mean, some of that's like past experiences and all of those kind of things grounded in that information. But I think, again, the core component of that is, what is it for you? Like, again, bringing it back to self, like tune everything else out, and what is authentic for you? What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you stand for? All of those kind of things without censoring. Because I think this is the other thing, as you just discussed, we get censored in ways. We get told how to show up. We get told what we're meant to say. We get, hooked into a story that what we want to say is either going to be misinterpreted, misunderstood, particularly in the current climate. And that's not, clearly that's Australian, that's US, that's pretty much anywhere you go in the world. These days, people get highly offended at the smallest of things. So what better way to manipulate someone to keep their mouth shut than feeling like you're going to offend somebody? All we get is you shut yourself down. Like you sit there and go, oh, I can't say that, or I'm going to upset that person, or no, get into that good girl, bad girl story. Like if I say that, then I'm a bad person. Might get called all sorts of names, and that's fear-based incentivizing to keep you small and keep you boxed and keep you conditioned. And I'm not saying it's easy to come out of that box. I'm not saying that at all. There's definitely a process of moving beyond that external validation, seeking that external validation, not just from the important people in your world, but also the people who don't even know you. We're giving them so much power in how we show up in the world, because someone might find your Facebook page and get offended by something that you've written or misinterpret it. And all sorts of things. And we give them power. Like they may not have even shown up, but we still give them power because we've heard stories about people having that happen. And so we don't want that to happen because we don't want to be a bad girl. We want to be a good girl.
Yeah. And so what does that journey look like when a client can take back their power? You know, is it a release of belief systems? Is it a reconnection with the body? Because you and I talked quite a bit about body disassociation. There's so much trauma and shame and guilt just in the physical vessel. You know, what does that look like in a typical client relationship for you to return them to their particular definition of their authentic self?
So my primary work is taking people through their stories. So what stories are they telling themselves? I mean, good girl, bad girl's just one of them. But as I said, the I am not enough conversation and seeking where that actually started. Because if we don't have that awareness, it'll keep showing up in our vision and keep re-triggering us and all of those kind of things into an automated response. So some of it is actually seeking that discomfort, which a lot of people don't want to do. We don't necessarily want to go to those hard places and pick out those moments that hurt us and set up a story that we created. Because let's be honest, most of our stories aren't positive ones. Most of us don't have healthy expressions of relationships, caring, parenting, you know, all of those kind of things. As I said, most of our stories aren't life enhancing, so I excavate those. Part of my work is to, as I said, again, tune back in, you know, what's the story behind a result? Like, let's say you wanted to lose weight. We'll just use that as a really easy conversation. The truth is that someone, when you were 7 years of age in the playground, said that you were fat and I can't be friends with you because you're fat and all of this kind of stuff. So you internalize that conversation that to be liked and included and all of those kind of things, I have to be of normal weight or skinny. So we'd go through that conversation with a client. I would go through that conversation with the client. We'd get back to the earliest presentation of that experience. And by having that awareness, I can go, oh my God, that's not actually me saying that. That's somebody else saying that. And therefore, that can be enough of a shift, and then we'll move on. We'll go, okay, when was the next time you heard that you had to be skinny to be included and accepted and validated and all of those kind of things? And we've progressed to today, right? We've progressed to today out of all of that. And as we know, this work is layered. It's not, again, a one session and done scenario, but some people can get huge breakthroughs in that, and it can be enough for them to process and move on. Most of the work is, and I'm sure yours does exactly the same, is bring the unconscious to the conscious, right? Because most of us are running unconsciously. We don't even know that 7-year-old Sarah is running a story of I'm unworthy because I'm fat because some classmate said that and didn't want to include me and all of that kind of stuff. So we blame the external. Like in this situation, we would blame society's vision of what looks good and all of those kind of things, and wonder why we're not actively taking steps to shift and create change. We keep hitting up against blocks. So that's basically what I do. I excavate those stories, and that can be anything from, as I said, weight loss conversations. It can be poor relationships, you know, ongoing relationship issues. As I said, even in my own journey of this, some of the stories that show up have been highly interesting. I still have this vision of myself in secondary school getting pulled aside by a teacher saying that I had to go to special English classes and all of this kind of stuff. And as vivid as it was yesterday, right? Because I wasn't aware of it in its own subtleties was showing up in my writing, how I express myself and all of those kind of things, and telling myself I'm crap at English and all of those. And yet I remember that. But I also have a master's degree in nutrition, right? So I can't be that bad. I can't be, but I don't remember, I don't focus on that. I focus, and we typically do, we focus on the negative. So as I said, clearing out those negative stories so that more positive conversation, self-awareness conversations can be had, that what is your actual true reality. And then, as I said, most of us don't actually realize that what we're striving for is not what we're really striving for. So we say weight loss, but what we want is to be included. If you're not aware of that, the weight loss is never going to happen.
I completely agree. The issue on the surface is not always the issue. There's typically something much, 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 much deeper. Something else that I encounter frequently is secondary benefits. How
Yes.
perhaps that weight has allowed you to avoid intimate relationships. And you may not be fully aware of that, but underneath all of the many layers of beliefs and memories and trauma and whatever it is, that is actually serving you in some way. And in playing it small has become a comfort zone. We're not even consciously aware of it.
No, and that is the thing that needs to be, as we said, expressed for holistic healing to occur, is that, yeah, most of our superficial, layers, probably pretty easy to excavate to a degree. We go, oh yeah, we want to lose weight because we've been told for our health, and we've been told because I've got a dodgy knee that if I lose weight, then, it's going to help that, and I might not need surgery and all of those kind of things. So people focus on that because they don't, and a lot of people don't have the strategies or skills to deep dive themselves. And then second to that, they don't actually want to ask for help for that. But as you said, like, I think, interestingly, when you brought up that intimate relationship conversation, there would be a story under that too, right? It's never necessarily just that one focus. You'll be surprised at where that direction goes. Like, it can be an abandonment issue. So if I shut myself off and I protect myself with this weight, then can't get hurt, I can't get abandoned. Yeah, the direction where these healings can go is exponentially if the person is willing to go there, right? Because I'm sure you've come up against people who are like, no, that's it. No, that's what I'm working on. That's it. That's the cause. That's the, hell-bent kind of, yeah, let's just stop there, right? Because that's their comfort, right? That's their comfort. And this is part of also the healing conversation that probably doesn't occur, is how messy it can get. It's, as I said, it's not linear, it's not clear. There's going to be times you're going to be crying, and there's going to be times that you're going, oh my God, how did I manage to get myself into this space? How was I not aware of this? That whole judgment, criticism side of things, that we need to bring in that kindness and compassionate conversation as well, that the kinder we are to ourselves, it's amazing how much easier it is to open ourselves up to that investigation of self-behavior and choices and all of those kind of things. So layered.
Yeah, so often we have an issue and we understand that there's something beneath it, like a memory or a trauma, but we often don't realize that that branches outward. You have all types of things to the left and to the right and all around you that may be contributing to that, and patterns that you have developed to protect yourself. There's safety mechanisms, and then there's energy that gets stored in the body, energy that just gets blocked and can't flow. And so I love that you have this approach that is not just diving deep, but it's like full on excavation. It's like we're digging out the whole foundation. We're finding all the cracks in every direction. And then we're going to build us back to this place of strength so that you have that ability to kind of come forward with your truth. Because a lot of times we feel almost cocky to speak our truth, and again, that goes back to that programming. But when it is on a physical, emotional, mental, and energetic level, and we've cleared out all of that stuff, all of a sudden it's like, no, this is just my truth. This is not me being cocky. This is not me being offensive. This is me stepping out of all of these paradigms and simply being the me that I was always destined to be.
Yeah, and it is interesting because people can be threatened by that, right? So people in your world that have got used to you being a certain way, that's also a way of keeping you in your box, is that fear of losing people and all of those kind of things. So there is that element of wanting to keep the peace, as women are typically taught to do. And that can harm us. Like, as you said, that can be a level of diminishing our expression from that side of things. And then, as you said, like, the work is to excavate it, and as I said, to come back into what is your truth. And I think the other flip side of this is, can we hear someone's truth without making it wrong? We as a collective generally aren't great at doing that, at going, just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean that that's not your experience, right? Can we like literally take that step and inform it from a point of neutrality, that this person is expressing themselves. This is, as you said, their truth. It might not be your truth, but that actually doesn't make them wrong. And I think this is a new direction that we need to shift conversations in. And can you advocate for yourself without making the other person wrong, right? As well. So flip side, two sides of the same story. Allow someone else to express themselves without you making them wrong, along with being heard in response, being able to say your truth without being made wrong or invalidated or any of that kind of stuff. I think there's a certain level of witnessing that's not going on collectively, individually, and even self, right? So again, as I said, tuning back into self, what is your truth? And being willing to acknowledge that it's not going to be everyone's truth, and being perfectly okay with that, like being perfectly okay with the fact they didn't experience your childhood, they didn't experience your experiences. So, but that doesn't make your experiences wrong, and that doesn't make you wrong. That's a direction I would love for the collective to shift into, is to be able to view people's truths as theirs. That doesn't have to be, and you don't have to be. Like, one of the biggest things that I've come into recently is I don't actually need you to agree with my point of view. How freeing that has been for me to then actually go, well, this is me. This is the conversation that I'm having. This is, again, I don't need you to agree with it. I'm just expressing it. I'm not seeking that external validation to say, yes, you're right, Sarah, because I know for some people, my vision is not their vision. That doesn't make them wrong, and it definitely doesn't make me wrong. I would collectively like to see a bit more awareness around that conversation, because as I said, it's both sides, like it works both ways. And as I said, advocating for yourself without making someone wrong is a powerful step in reducing attachments and to outcomes and all of those kind of things. And this can even be in your own family life, right? Like, let's say you're constantly feel like you're hitting your head up against a brick wall because your kids aren't, putting the dirty clothes in the laundry and all of this kind of stuff. Can you advocate for them to, do that without actually making them wrong for not doing it, right? Is there a way that you can sit there and go, I would appreciate it if you, as opposed to, can you just, do it, and all of those kind of things. And the acknowledgement behind that is it's a different energetic conversation, right? They're less likely to get defensive. You're less likely to get angry and frustrated. If we can, as I said, advocate for our own needs without making someone else wrong and bringing them into the conversation as opposed to excluding them from the conversation, because we've got to remember that they've got needs too, right? So if we want our needs met, there's going to be an element of them wanting to have their needs met. As I said, it can't just be a one-way street from this conversation. So, and I think this is the direction that we're currently sitting in, is that it's a level of my needs aren't getting met, so therefore I'm not going to meet your needs, or I'm going to make it hard for you to have your needs met, and then I'm just going to shut down and become defensive and angry and frustrated, and blame anyone and everyone else for what's going on. And there's a story underneath that advocacy conversation as well. So, but that's a direction I would love to see, that a conversation can be had where you're not sitting there instantly making someone wrong because you disagree with them.
That there is so much there. And the first thing I thought about is, today when we're filming this is the US presidential elections, and the energy is very much us versus them, red versus blue, right versus left. We have all come to where we are right now because of billions and billions of circumstances, ancestral lines, stories that we're telling ourselves, stories that we've been told from other people, centuries and centuries of religion or government systems, or even just very generalized thought paradigms that have conditioned us to look at one another and see the differences. But I see the world shifting. I see things changing. And I would love to hear, what does that look like when someone has that realization that they don't have to operate from a place of fear, where they can allow someone to just be who they are, and they can be who they are as well, without having to condemn or correct or chastise how the others are showing up. I don't know, like a place of just authentic acceptance, like unconditional acceptance and love and truth.
And in truth, that starts with self and then ripples. I'm a big believer in the ripple effect, that what starts internally will be expressed externally. So if you give yourself the allowance to do that, then you allow someone else to do that. Like that whole, being seen, heard, and witnessed, and all of those kind of things is so powerful and nourishing to someone's soul, that in truth, my work is as simply as that: seeing them, hearing them, witnessing them, and then getting them to go, what do I want to align myself with? What do I want to stand for? What do I want to, and getting them to a point of comfort with that conversation, right? And that's because I can be generally neutral, right? I'm not a family member who's going to get all upset because all of a sudden they're asking me to fold my own clothes, and they've been doing it for, years, and then all of that kind of stuff, right? Because, there's going to be that little bit of disharmony in the middle of that recalibration process, we'll call it. Because when you come into that awareness, you can either get really angry and frustrated that somebody isn't doing what you want them to do, or that you've allowed yourself to do something that you no longer want to do. So there's going to be that, as we said, recalibration phase where you learn to express yourself in a fashion that can be seen and heard by the other person without getting them defensive. And so when they come to see me and I'm completely neutral and I can go, yep, I can see your point of view, and I'm not going to get angry and frustrated with them, it gives them that space just to express themselves. Like they can sit there and go, that's what I stand for. And I'm going, okay, great. If that's what you stand for, how are you going to express that? Like when you go home, how are you going to say that? How are you going to ask for that? And obviously we go into that little bit of disharmony conversation, that if they say that, then what are you going to do? And how are you going to, all of those conversations as part of the healing process. But again, it starts with self. It starts with being kind and compassionate towards yourself. It starts with removing judgment towards self, primarily, because then that frees you up to disconnect from the judgment of others. Because and a lot of this is all about, as we said, bringing power back to self, and stop giving it away to anyone and everyone in our world, whether that's government, family, extended family, workplaces, the whole kit and caboodle, the person in the line at the bank. Yeah, if we neutralize our response, so e.g., as you were talking about earlier, that somatic conversation starts to come in. How can we soothe our own nervous system response, soothe those stories ourselves, so that we don't, because I don't want someone relying on me completely for that soothing strategy. I'm all about self-management, in part of that process, in giving people tools to take home and use themselves and all of that kind of stuff. And that's the same with my massage. I don't actually ask them to rely on me. Like a common thing I'll say, if you need to see me every week, I'm not doing my job. If you want to see me, want and need being different, right? If you want to see me every week, then that's fine. But if you need to see me, then I'm not doing my job. And I see that around the collective as well, in terms of holistic counselling. If you need to see me every week, that might be initially, right, in that acute phase. But if you are using me as a crux, then we need to have a conversation around that as well. Because eventually you do need to actually stand on your own 2 feet and stand up and be able to present yourself in your community, whether that's family, as I said, broader community and all of that kind of stuff, asking for what you want without getting angry, defensive if it's not met. It's like, how can you process that? How can you soothe that response so that not only do you not get defensive, but neither do they? Because that shuts down conversations 10 times over. If you come in and go, we all know that kind of person. We've all had that incident where something's been tipped, words come out of our mouths that we don't want said. And again, you can't take them back. So you've just got to remember that as well. And that sets up a dynamic. So if you come into a conversation calm, centered, self-soothed, and aware of why you're having this conversation, where it's coming from and all of that, and particularly the potential for the response from someone, because if you've worked through your stuff, you kind of start to open your eyes up to see where someone else's stories might be showing up. like their
Yeah.
experience of childhood and all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of softens you. The more work you do on self softens you to others. But yeah, if you come into a conversation on a soft, grounded, aware platform compared to angry, frustrated, and annoyed, you can feel the energetic difference. And they're going to be, oh, okay, I haven't heard her say this. I can actually start to hear it. You know, the other person can start to hear your words as opposed to instantly like the angry conversation. I've got to defend myself. I've got to protect myself, all of those kind of things. Yeah, that excavation process is primarily for self. Like, again, coming back to self, what do you need? How can you feed you, particularly in those moments of stress? Like what words can you say to yourself? What actions can you say to yourself? And yourself, you're probably well aware of the breath work. That's probably the easiest one to come back to. Doesn't need anybody else. You can just taking some deep breaths and remembering why you want to have this conversation, how you want the outcome to, vision itself, and all of those kind of things can take that edge off. And again, it's a practice. It's not a one and done kind of thing. Family need to probably hear you say something 10 times over before they kind of go, oh, she's actually serious. Like, this is a new experience of this person standing in front of me. I'm used to this and now I'm getting this. So they've got to go through a period of calibration as well. We can't forget that it's not just us calibrating, it's them calibrating to your new expression as well.
Something that came through when you were talking about that is just this idea of trust. And so much of what we do is building a relationship with our clients that is firmly rooted in trust. And you and I had a long conversation about being a spiritual or a holistic practitioner and entering this space of marketing oneself that traditionally has not been a space where you could trust messaging. How do you build trust with potential clients so that they do take that step to go deep and excavate and not just allow you in, but to feel safe getting into all of the deep, dark spaces within themselves?
Trust is such an interesting experience, right? Most of us isn't just around the marketing conversation that we've got a lack of trust. There will be stories in our life that have said you can't trust that person because they said this but didn't do that, right? And then I think that is because it's not just our own experiences with that. So that's everyone coming into this space. I think the other thing about the space is it's not just holistic spiritual businesses in the space. Again, their expression is going to probably be different from ours. And I think this is where I was only having a conversation yesterday about the impact on my mental health around the social media space as a business owner. So we all know the damage it does to our teenagers and, young kids' minds and all of that kind of stuff. And I hadn't actually thought about it as a business owner. When you're trying to, grow a business and following and all of those kind of things, the subversive tactics that are used, again, to tune you out, like primarily to tune you out. They get you hyper-focused on numbers. They get you hyper-focused on likes. They get hyper-focused on what you need to say. Get that hook that will, bring them in and all of those kind of things. People will go off, and we had this conversation briefly about going to AI and getting what hook are we going to say and all of those kind of things, because that's actually tuning us out and not trusting what we actually want to say, right? So part of my marketing journey has been coming back to self, tuning that external noise and fuzziness out to what do I actually stand for? And I've recently done a whole stack of posts on this around, do you trust woo? What might impact your ability to trust the alternative? Money stories, if you're driven by money, what might be going on there? Because people have made judgments when I say I'm not driven by the dollar, people go, oh, but what about your impact? And what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, in truth, I'm concerned with the person in front of me. I'm not actually, and I believe in that ripple effect. Like if I, affect a change with self, then I have the potential to affect a change within others. That person then can affect change, and then so on and so on. I actually don't need to impact 1 million women, right? I actually don't need to do that. for a shift to be created from that standpoint. But they're the stories that we're getting told, that, you know, you want to have to be bigger, more, bring more people in, more. And we're not be satisfied with where we're at. So, and I think I'm hearing more and more people, including myself, saying I think I should be further along than where I am because of that external story getting shown to me by Facebook, by Instagram, by TikTok, I don't watch a lot of TikTok, so, but even YouTube, all of that kind of stuff, right? Where we get caught in, oh, how many people have they got as followers, and all of this kind of stuff as a form of tuning ourselves out. So, as I said, my marketing process, particularly recently, I had a huge pivot point in the middle of the year to kind of go, okay, what is it that I want? Like, if I don't want to do all the webinars, if I don't want to create a short course, if I don't want to do all of that kind of stuff, what is it that I actually want? And gaining clarity around that conversation and gaining, as I said, the component of coming back to self. What do I stand for? How do I show up showing that, as you said, because that's a big part of it, because you can decide that that's what you stand for, but how are you expressing that? So for me personally, I took all testimonials off my webpage. I don't want people to be externally influenced by someone else, because here in Australia, our allied health practitioners cannot actually have them on their website. I'm not under that category, but because they believe that you can't guarantee what one person has had as an outcome for them, right? Because they're two different people. So you can't actually guarantee that. So as I said, I've taken all testimonials off my website. I've taken off my pop-up. I'm like, I find them annoying, so I'm just removing that. Just going. Because I had a conversation around, is your freebie really free? Right? Is that little, because there's still an exchange going on. So I've said, like, if you want to sign up to my newsletter, which I haven't even sent one out, so it's not clearly a big aspect of my business, is in exchange for your email, you will receive this, right? I've got a meditation in there, and I've got, you know, an 11 tips kind of thing going on there. So they're my ways that I'm starting to shift how I show up and stand by what I say. Because, like, if I want you to tune in and trust your intuition as to whether I'm the right person, I actually don't want you to hear what someone else is saying. I want you to have that capacity. And I've said, like, on my services page, I've explained why I don't have them on there. I've said, if you want to check out if I'm for you, go to my social media, go, you know, have a look around the website, because I've got resources there. I've got, you know, blog posts there. I've got, you know, all of those kind of things where somebody can see who it is that I am. And you can even have a free 15-minute chat with me if you're still unsure. Like I even said in that little bit about why I don't have testimonials, that if you need someone else's proof to work with me, then maybe I'm not the right person for you. Like, I'm willing to put that out there, that if you and it's a conversation coming through for myself now, that social proofing actually keeps us stuck, right? Because it doesn't actually allow our true creativity to come through, and it's still a form of external validation. You're still saying I'm not valid without someone else saying that I am worthy, or my offering is worthy, or anything like that. What's important is I believe my offering is valuable, worthy, and all of those kind of things. And then it's up to you to either resonate with that energetically, however you choose to work with someone. But I've made that stand. I've said, no, cleared it out. It just didn't feel right. And it was just like, you know, if I'm making that stand, then I'm, you know, placing that there. And then I said freebie stuff. You know, my free content's on my Facebook page. You know, that's my free content. As I said, if you want something to sign up to my email thing, that's an exchange. There is an exchange occurring. It is not free. Yes, you're not paying money, but broader conversation to free is it's not just about money, right? There's an energetic exchange occurring. So So yeah, so as I said, that's how it's showing up in my marketing currently and consistently. Is I don't have a huge call to action on any of my content. It's, if you're interested, you'll go looking. Like, I trust that if you're interested in what I have to offer, you will go looking. I'm not the kind of, and I know we've all had those kind of business coaches that tell you you've got to have a call to action at every end of it, at every post. And I'm struggling to fit my post content into lovely Instagram's word count. So there's no room to put a link to something else or to say, here's a link to something. It is there occasionally if I make mention of it. There'll be a reason for that, but it's not a common process for me to put, if you'd like to have a session with me, then, click through to this link, or any of those kind of strategies. And as I said, I'm finding my way through that. And typically I'm responding to something that I see out there and going, do I agree? Yes or no? If I don't, am I unconsciously partaking in that conversation? So I excavate my own bit around that. And then I will, as I said, either change it, highlight it, and all of those kind of things. So yeah, as I said, that's how it's showing up for me.
Transparency in our business is absolutely key. And as someone who was in corporate marketing for 18 years, the tactics definitely worked within that paradigm of highlighting the pain point, driving home the peer pressure of look at what all of these other people have experienced, and all of this, like these many layers of pressure and urgency, drive urgency, give them a time limit. Just, and I want to say the word tactics, they're strategies. And the hardest thing for me moving away from being in corporate marketing and now being an intuitive and a hypnotist and a graphic designer, so I'm still doing marketing, but I'm doing it within this spiritual space. That has been the hardest shift for me, because it makes perfect sense to be authentic, but there's not really a roadmap to authentic, transparent marketing. And just like that authentic journey to self, I think it's different for everyone. You have found a beautiful way to navigate that, where you're flat out talking about it on your page. I have removed these testimonials because this needs to resonate with you. And I just love that so much, because clients, our audience, customers, whatever you want to call them, humanity is not just waking up to strategy and being influenced, and how how influenced they can be, but their own intuition is also coming online. And over the past few years, especially since 2020, we're tuning into what doesn't resonate. That even just the words resonate, vibe, check your energy, get into flow. These didn't used to be part of our common vernacular 5-10 years ago. And so I agree with you completely. I think that the way that we market ourselves really thrives when you are building these authentic relationships, when it is very much, this is who I am, this is who you are, and if a path can be forged between, that we both just have to show up completely authentic. There can be no BS in the way. As a client or as a practitioner, we have to really clear out all of the stuff that is taking us away from this world that we work in. And being a holistic practitioner or a wellness practitioner, it is a completely unique space.
It is, and as I said, I think it is one that doesn't vibe with the traditional marketing, because most of us come to this as a heart-centered individual, and we don't see business just as business, right? Because we are
Right.
creating connections. We are creating connections. So to us, it's not just an end goal of $1 at the end of the year. It's, yeah, highlighting and helping others to achieve their best and greatest outcomes, right? Is probably at the core of every heart-centered business person's goals. And then that gets kind of jammed with the traditional market. You've got to have a income goal. And if you don't, you have a mindset issue, a money mindset issue. You can't just be driven to help people. There's got to be a dollar figure under that, and there's got to, all of those kind of things. So we're hitting up against broad people who aren't from the holistic space, trying to market to those who are in the holistic space using a more traditional thing, but then jigging it with words that sound good to a heart-centered business practitioner. And then we wonder why we're caught in the middle going, what the? I'm hearing two different things. My heart's saying one thing, my head's hearing another thing. So what is that? What is that? So, and I think part of the conversation that you were just bringing up before, when we're talking about that resonance and connection and all of that, there is a huge amount of trust in that what is for us will show up, right? And that gets disconnected to the traditional marketing stuff because they're all about, you've got to create it, you've got to push for it, you've got to, do all of that kind of stuff. And tune your heart out, basically. Tune your heart out to that conversation, become a bit cold and rigid to that. And then yet, as I said, they're trying to jam into this space that they're actually not comfortable in either. And that's why there's this kind of, we're now in that space where, as you said, heart-centered people and even receivers of these messages are now going, that actually doesn't feel good. Like, they're trying to say the right thing, but then their actions are saying something else. And then, all of this so there is a disconnect there that's not, and I think part of that is because we don't actually have enough heart-centered marketers who are strong enough in their messaging to say it can be done differently. As I said, there's a huge amount of trust and faith on the back end of that, right? There is an infinite amount of you sitting there going, if I show up in my truth, I will attract the right people to me, right? Just as much as you repel the wrong people.
Beautifully said. So beautiful.
And this is where we're struggling. This is where we're struggling because I've been going through this signed up to business courses that I got short way in when they went through all the strategies that they used to hook us in. And I just went, oh my God, I fell for every single one of them. Do you know how dumb I felt on the other end? I literally tuned out of that whole course. I just went, that's not vibing with me. And again, it's still that conversation of again, tuning yourself out to make $1. And I'm not willing to do that. Like, I'm literally not willing to do that. And so, as I said, in that part of the clearing out is just showing up as myself, saying what I want to say in a fashion that is in alignment with me and taking actions on that. So if something shows up that I now start to question, then I'll go, oh, okay. If I'm questioning that, then I know others are questioning that because I'm highly sensitive to the collective energies. So I know it's not just me questioning that, hence the whole icky marketing tactics of the urgency conversation. You've only got 2 days to buy and you've only got this and you've only got that. And I mean, well and good if you've been incentivizing it with somebody you're already going to work with. But my question to you is, and this is a collective question, is how do you feel when you receive that messaging? Does that make you feel pressured? Does it make you worry about rushing into this purchase, offering, all of that kind of stuff? And you could be in love with the offering and still feel these two stresses and go, okay, can I take a step back? Is this still something I want to invest in? And again, we've got to bring it back to self from that scenario, even as business owners and all of that kind of stuff. How is this going to make the person on the receiving end feel? Do they feel safe? Do they feel nourished? Do they feel nurtured? Because that's important to me. You might have different goals and categories that you want to work with. you might want them to feel inspired and, excited and all of these kind of things. Whereas, as I said, my drivers tend to be, do they feel nourished and nurtured and safe and all of those kind of things? Is that what I am sending out there? If I'm saying you've only got 2 days to buy this, or 2 days to hook into this, or 2 days for this offering. And that was part of, I had a workshop that didn't quite go to plan in the middle of the year. As I said, big pivot point for me to sit there and go, I actually didn't like an open cart, closed cart story. I didn't actually like all the pressure to create it. I didn't like even creating a sales page that had to be like, and my sales page was nothing like those ones that you see. Again, no testimonials written in it, whereas everyone goes, just make them long, just keep them going, keep them going, keep them going. And I'm like, I put the price at the top of the page. That's another one for me. I hate scrolling to the bottom of the page to find out how much it's going to, because I do that. I actually don't read the rest of the sales page. I go straight to the bottom. How much is it going to cost me? Well, I can potentially invest in that. And then I'll go back and read maybe what it's actually about. Right. But there's strategies that I didn't implement in my sales page. It was like price at the top point, because if that's going to influence you, I'd rather you check in, check out, and be gone. And if you're interested, keep reading. I'm not going to use that as a form of influence to get you to read through a whole stack of crap that you didn't want to read. And from that standpoint, but even in my copy, I was like, this is the day, this is the time, this is how much it's going to cost you, this is what you get. In truth, I didn't even really need to go to the sales page, right? From that standpoint, because I already gave them all the information and all of that kind of stuff. So again, that's a marketing strategy that I implemented in that. But as I said, coming out of that, it was just like, and I didn't even really like, because the whole idea was that you create this webinar and then you go on to create a short course out of it, and you get people to keep up leveling and investing in something bigger and bigger and all of that. And I don't have a high ticket pricing offer. My sessions are one session. You buy one session, you have as many sessions as you want, when you want, how you want. Frequency is your choice. I'm not pressuring you into discounting 10 packs or any of those kind of things, right? It was just like, I don't even want to create the course. It's just like, oh my God, that messy middle moment where you're kind of going, as I said, what is it that I want to do? How do I want to show up? What do I want it to look like? And what do I and don't I stand for in creating this? And most of us are afraid to take those steps, right? Because we literally go, what's on the other side of that? What if there's nothing on the other side of it? And I'm sitting in that space, trusting that's what's showing up for me right now is perfect. Absolutely needs to be seen, heard, witnessed, accepted, surrendered to, so that that future vision is built on a solid ground, not the fear of having no money, having no clients, having no business, right? Because that's a large driver that would come into awareness. That's been one of my large drivers for this side of my business, because I couldn't work. So it's like, if I can't work, what am I going to create, right? So I'll dive into the online space. Surprise, surprise, I haven't been overly happy in the online space. I've been bombarded with all these techniques, strategies that aren't heart-centered, even though someone's trying to tell me they're heart-centered, and all of those kind of things, but they don't resonate with my heart. So good for you if you want to do that webinar and you want to, run it 5 times a year, and you want to upgrade people to your course, and you want to upgrade them to a high ticket offering. If that resonates with your heart, good for you, go for it. But it doesn't resonate with mine. So I'm opening the story in conversation for those people. But if it doesn't resonate with your heart, and I could use a call here now, come chat with me, but it's just like, let's get clear on you getting clear on what you want. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to talk to me. You might find someone else to have that chat with. You might, as I said, I'm just opening the door to that conversation, that you're actually allowed to have that conversation. You are actually allowed to sit there and go, I feel shitty because I don't actually want to have a sales page that somebody's got to write, that takes 10 minutes for them to read through. I want them to be in and out. I want them, because that's what I want, right? Like, if you flip it onto what's important to you and you shine that out, you show up and you offer a difference. Like, I'm not saying that people have to do it my way, but find your way. Like, let's excavate the conversation and remove that layer of disconnect between, because again, we're tuned to tune our business out and just go for more clients and more money and all of that kind of stuff. And then wonder why at the end of the day we're either getting burnt out, we don't have energy left over for the things that we love because we've been so depleted in the work that we've been doing. I'm opening the door to that conversation that you're allowed to say something else. You're allowed to say something different.
I think that's beautiful. And Sarah, you're the type of practitioner that I wish more spiritual business owners could emulate, because when you strip away the fear of where's the next dollar going to come from, and you strip away the fear of if I do this differently, what will it look like on the other side? Then you really do get into that frequency of simply proclaiming your truth. And that frequency will be in alignment for someone and someone's that really are your ideal client. So tell me, if someone wants to get in touch with you and work with you and see more of what you do, where would they be able to find you?
Social media is Sarah Yeoman Integrative Wellness, and website is www.sarahyeomanwellness.com.
Beautiful, Sarah. Well, I have loved this conversation so much. And I think that it would be great if we could do a follow-up conversation in the future. It's been awesome getting to know you and your business and your philosophy. And I look forward to another conversation again soon. I feel like we could have a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for opening the door. Thank you for opening the door to have this conversation.